Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing? Thank you for joining the next round of community outreach meetings for the Sepulveda Transit Corridor Project. My name is Oscar Robles, and I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for Project Delivery and Community Relations. We want to thank all of you who have made it their way to this meeting and who probably have been with us throughout many meetings. I want to thank also our partners and elected officials who are in this room as well. Before we continue, we just want to do some housekeeping. There is interpretation available. So please follow the icons. Si usted desea información en español, por favor, haga clic en el icono de interpretación y escoja la opción para escuchar español. Puede escuchar español, pero también si quiere participar de la conversación, por favor, entre al chat y también ponga sus preguntas o sus comentarios en español. We want to let you know that today's meeting is also being recorded. Your cameras are off and the microphones are muted. If for some reason you have any problems trying to either see us or hear us, or if you're having problem communicating with us, please call the number on the screen, which is 323-917-0991. Again, that's 323-917-0991. That number is just for technical support. To communicate about this project. There are other ways to communicate that we'll share at the end. Now we want to do a quick poll, two simple questions. Where do you live? And if you've been with us before in similar meetings. And I'm just gonna let you answer quickly, and then we'll come back with the results. I'm gonna share the results in a minute now.
And I will share the results. Seems now that we have a stagnant number.
Okay, excellent. So we have a good representation here. A lot from San Fernando Valley, a lot of folks from outside of LA County. So thank you. Thank you for voting. Excellent. So next slide, please. Okay, so because this is a public elicitation event, we definitely want to hear from you. We have a Q&A. You see the icon on your bottom left side. We're going to try to answer as many questions as possible. Please feel free to share all your comments and your questions there. Next slide, please. And we're excited to share some good news. As a lot of you may or may not know, the D line has extended to 3 stops: La Brea, Fairfax, and Cienega. A perfect trip to go see museums and a lot of the cultural offering from that part of the Los Angeles. So please join us for the opening of this starting on May 8th. You can use the D line. Okay, so today's speaker is going to be myself, Oscar Robles, like I said, Deputy Executive Officer for Community Relations, my colleague, Anthony Trump, the Executive Officer for Product Delivery and Community Relations, and Cecily Way, our Senior Executive Officer for Countrywide Planning and Development. And just to go through some of the items today. So some of you may or may not know some about what the Sepulveda Transit Corridor is doing. So we're going to provide some history. We're going to talk about the locally preferred alternative and then next steps, which includes design refinements, the environmental process, geotech investigations, and a community engagement, which is how you communicate with us and you can let your footprint in the project as well. With that, I'm going to leave it to my colleague, Anthony Trump, who is going to take over the presentation. Have a great day.
Thank you, Oscar. Pleased to be here with everyone today. As many of you know, Metro has a plan to make it easier to get around Los Angeles. This includes better transit. This particular project, which I'm really excited to talk about in this next phase of work, will provide a fast, safe, and reliable transit option between the Valley and the West Side. Let's go to the next slide. So why the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project? Next slide, please. I think many of you are familiar with the 405 freeway. And if you've attended any of our meetings in the past, you know that I've talked a little bit about the unpredictability of the freeway itself, the fact that there are very few options to get from the west side to the valley and vice versa. There are about 400,000 trips through the pass daily, and less than 2% of those trips are actually taken by transit. Next slide. So this particular project looks to create a new, fast, reliable, and safe transit option that connects the valley and the west side. It'll also link, almost as importantly, many of the existing or under construction transit lines. This includes connections to the Metro D line, which Waskar just talked a little bit about, the Metro E line, as well as the Metro G line, and the under construction East San Fernando Valley Light Rail Transit Project. This project would actually save travel time for residents by offering a trip from the Van Nuys Metrolink station to the E line that would be about 20 minutes by transit. And let me just take a second to let that sink in. Imagine going from the Van Nuys Metrolink station to the E line all the way across the pass in less than 20 minutes or so. So the point is that this will provide mobility options that would reduce the vehicle miles traveled. It would provide mobility options that do not currently exist for many of the residents and businesses along that particular corridor. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned previously, we're looking at creating a fast and reliable transit option that goes between the valley and the west side. Trips from the valley to the west side right now can take anywhere from about 40 to 80 minutes, and that's particularly on a good day. Imagine if there is a SIG alert or a traffic accident or a special event taking place in Westwood or in Sherman Oaks, that travel time can easily be doubled. But this particular transit project would provide safe, reliable access between between Van Nuys and Westwood in about 10 minutes. In addition, with the D-line extension that's currently under construction, you could connect easily at the Westwood station or the UCLA station and go from Van Nuys to downtown Los Angeles in about 35 to 40 minutes, which right now is pretty much unheard of. Not only does this project open up the Valley and the West Side transit connection, but it also opens up Metro's rail line to the entire county. So it's about creating opportunity and options for mobility across the county, not just in this particular corridor. Next slide, please. So our journey with this particular project began in 2017 with the feasibility study. The feasibility study looked at a number of different options that were then winnowed down as we began the environmental review process in 2021. The draft environmental impact report actually looked at 5 alternatives. And last summer, we released the draft for public comment and for public review. In that draft environmental impact report, we analyzed 5 different alternatives. We received more than 8,000 comments. And then earlier this year, the Metro Board of Directors selected the locally preferred alternative, which is the route that will be analyzed for future environmental studies. Which brings us to today, where we're doing a project update. We're going to lay out for you a little bit more information about the locally preferred alternative, as well as what our next steps and timeline look to be. Next slide. As I mentioned previously, the draft environmental impact report was released for a 90-day public comment period back on June 2nd of 2025. At that time, we held 5 community meetings and 5 public hearings. We received more than 8,000 total comment submissions, which is the most comments that we've ever received on a Metro project. Of those submissions, about 7,300 of them expressed some type of support for the project. About less than 1% expressed opposition to the overall project. Next slide, please. So what did we hear? We heard that people were interested in the fastest travel times. People were interested in making seamless connections to the other transit lines, as I mentioned earlier. We heard that people felt that UCLA station, an on-campus station, was a very important benefit to them. And then we also expressed some interest in potentially combining the different alternatives. Some of the concerns that we're aware of are about property acquisitions, some of the aesthetics and equity of an aerial alignment along Sepulveda Boulevard, as well as impacts to DWP facilities, including the need for a ventilation shaft in the Santa Monica Mountains. Next slide. So I want to share with you a little bit of the feedback that we received about the project over the last year or so, particularly during that DIR comment period. So after that, we'll go into a little bit more of a discussion about the locally preferred alternative. So go ahead and run the video, please. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Cecily Way, who's going to talk a little bit more about the locally preferred alternative, as well as the next steps for the project. Cecily?
Thank you, Anthony. Informed by these extensive comments, along with cost consideration, technical analysis, and other factors, Metro's Board of Directors selected a locally preferred alternative for this project at its January board meeting. Next slide. The fully underground LPA, or locally preferred alternative, follows Van Nuys Boulevard in the valley and generally Sepulveda Boulevard on the west side, with the southern terminus Expo Sepulveda Station. This alignment takes elements of what was alternative 6 in the draft EIR and alternative 5 in the draft EIR, and leverages the technology and construction and operational approach of alternative 5. The previous alternative 6 alignment through the Santa Monica Mountains would be refined, as the locally preferred alternative would not require a mid-mountain ventilation shaft that had been planned under alternative 6. The LPA includes an initial operating segment, or IOS, between the G line and the East San Fernando Valley Light Rail in the valley, and the D line in Westwood, providing the first piece of what would be operating for the project. Because that locally preferred alternative is in the middle of the project and the previous maintenance and storage facilities that had been considered were outside of it, this IOS would require a new maintenance and storage facility strategy. Next slide. The locally preferred alternative also includes automated heavy rail trains. Some renderings of those are shown on the left here. These trains are planned to arrive every 2.5 minutes during peak periods, with the capability to be even more frequent when needed. Because the frequency of those trains arriving is more rapid, correspondingly, the trains themselves and the stations are planned to be shorter than other metro heavy rail stations, which results in smaller areas needing to be excavated during construction. All of the stations for the locally preferred alternative are underground, and examples of some underground stations from the previous phase of design are shown on the right here. Next slide. The locally preferred alternative aligns with the goals identified in CEQA scoping and in the draft EIR, as well as many of the comments received to date, including the over 8,000 on the draft EIR. Alternative 5, which the LPA is a modification of, was the highest ridership and among the fastest alternatives. The travel time of alternative 5 is anticipated to be reduced and improved with the LPA, as the route is shorter and more direct. The LPA includes direct connections to the Metro D, E, G, and Eastern Valley lines, and the Metrolink Ventura County lines, and connections to the D, G, and East Central Valley lines as part of that first piece. Alternative 5 had the greatest VMT reduction, and this phasing approach allows for the project's mobility benefits to be delivered earlier as funding is available. The LPA has the shortest, most direct alignment of any of the alternatives that have been considered, and has the fewest number of stations, and we're anticipating that that could help to reduce costs. Next slide. Now that the Metro Board has selected a local preferred alternative, we're moving forward on advancing the project in many different ways. Next slide. We're going to provide you an update today on what we're up to as we continue to bring the project forward towards construction and eventually operations. I'm going to walk through each of these efforts organized broadly into 5 categories: design refinements and engineering, environmental, geotechnical and site investigations, delivery planning, and community engagement. And these are all oriented around key milestones that we're advancing to get to environmental approvals. First, the LPA itself modifies, like I said, is a combination of multiple alternatives that had been considered and modifies elements of those alternatives that have been previously developed. Because of that, planning and design of the project needs to be updated and advanced in order to continue to move both the environmental review and the engineering forward. So we have to bring what had been alternative 5 sort of into sync with the current alignment definition. So areas where the modified alternative 5 or the LPA would be following the alternative 6 route, the alignment itself needs to be updated to reflect the design and operational approach of alternative 5 with a single bore tunnel construction and automated rail cars, as well as considerations for an IOS where the G line, the connection of the G line and the connection of the D line would serve as interim termini during the operation of the IOS. Additionally, we're looking at a new maintenance facility concepts because that IOS is outside, or the maintenance facilities previously were outside of that segment. And then additionally, we're looking at other potential refinements. of those many comments we received during the draft EIR circulation, we're looking at those for other ideas and ways to continue to reduce costs, address impacts. Next slide. The next piece of work that we continue to advance are environmental approvals. First, I'll focus on federal approvals under the National Environmental Policy Act. So Metro is currently circulating a planning and environmental linkages or PEL study for the project. This federal process allows NEPA or National Environmental Policy Act review to be streamlined and takes all of the extensive work and input received during the draft EIR process and takes it to inform the NEPA process. This study allows for the NEPA process, as that formal process begins, to focus on the LPA. And while the PEL study does include all of the CEQA alternatives, that analysis is based on the analysis in the draft EIR, with an additional look at some specific federal requirements and federal environmental considerations. The analysis of the LPA in the draft or in the PEL is based on the draft EIR analysis of alternatives 5 and 6, but is preliminary given that design is currently being refined. This document is available for review right now, and the comment period for that PEL study will close May 9th. Next. As we prepare for starting the project's federal environmental approvals, we continue to advance the state environmental approvals under CEQA or the California Environmental Quality Act. Because the LPA was not an alternative that was studied in the draft EIR, Metro will prepare a recirculated draft EIR which focuses on the LPA. This document will have a similar level of engineering and environmental detail to the draft EIR, which was circulated last summer, and will be circulated for public comment just like the draft EIR. This process will move forward in parallel with the NEPA process. Instead of them being sequential, they'll move forward together and in sync, evaluating the same alternative. Responses to the comments that were provided on the draft EIR last summer will be shared prior to the recirculated draft EIR release. Next slide. The next piece of work that we're moving forward with is our geotechnical and site investigations. To inform more detailed engineering and design of the project, as it continues to advance, Metro will be initiating a program of geotechnical and site investigations. These location-specific investigations allow engineers to understand the soil and rock that tunneling will encounter ahead of construction so that the design reflects these conditions. This is really about making sure that the design reflects the current understanding of the ground conditions so that construction can be as efficient and predictable as possible and cost-effective. Next slide. As these investigations start to begin, which we anticipate kicking off this summer, the duration of each of those previous slide, please. The duration of each investigation will vary by the type of data that's being gathered and the type of ground as well as the depth. So for example, a geotechnical investigation that's 40 feet deep will generally take a shorter amount of time than an investigation that's 200 feet deep. Some of these sites will have monitoring equipment installed, and these images on the right are images of what that monitoring equipment could look like, so that Metro can track groundwater levels or other information and data as seasons change, as years change, and actually as construction moves forward. So to be able to understand and manage and reflect what's actually going on as construction occurs. As these investigations move forward, surrounding property owners and occupants will be notified ahead of any investigations occurring. Next slide. While we're doing a lot of planning and designing for the project, Metro is also looking ahead at how this project will be delivered. Another thing that's innovative and different about this project compared to other Metro projects is that Metro is looking at delivering as a P3 or public-private partnership. To date, Metro has had two different potential private developer partners working to develop alternatives for delivering the project. With the selection of the LPA, there's one that Metro is continuing to work with, and that is Sepulveda Transit Corridor Partners. So what is a P3? A P3 is a contractual arrangement between a public agency and a private entity to deliver and operate an asset. It leverages the private sector's skills in financing. It provides a way to share in risks and rewards of a project and incentivizes innovation and long-term performance. It's important to note it doesn't provide free money, but rather financing or a funding source that requires repayment in the future. Metro continues to retain ownership of the assets. We think this project could be uniquely suited to be delivered as a P3 given the different design, operational funding, and financing considerations for this specific project. Next slide. In order to evaluate whether this makes sense as a P3, Metro will be undertaking a P3 evaluation focused specifically on the LPA. So in order to do this, we're working to update a lot of information based specifically on the LPA, including things like cost, construction, and other considerations, and both for the operational element of the project as well as for construction. And that updated information will allow us to compare value trade-offs between delivering the project as a P3 or other ways that Metro projects are typically delivered. This evaluation provides an opportunity to validate this P3 approach that we've been pursuing. We'll also be working on a funding plan for the project, including identifying and securing project funding and evaluating financing strategies and opportunities. I'll pass it back to Anthony to cover our last ongoing effort, community engagement.
Thank you, Cecily. So as we've done for the last several years, we'll be continuing our community engagement throughout this entire environmental process. This includes formal comment opportunities during the scoping period, as well as during the recirculated draft environmental impact report and the NEPA circulation period as well. And with that, we're going to conclude our formal presentation, and we're going to move into our questions and answers period. So we want to thank everyone for joining us today at our product update community meeting. We also have 4 additional meetings that will be taking place over the next week or so. We encourage you to join us in person at any of those meetings. If you'd like to get more information about the project or stay in the know, we strongly encourage you to sign up for our email and newsletter distribution list. You can do that on our project website. In addition, you can reach out to us via mail by sending email to Peter Carter, Project Manager, Metro, the address on the screen. You can also call our hotline number or email us at sepulvedatransit@metro.net. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you either at our community meetings next week and the week after, or in our future meetings. Thanks again, and have a good afternoon.